Imagine knowing everything before you were born. This is Robert Manni, host of Guys TV, and this week my special guest is Christian Sundberg. We're going to talk about his pre-birth memories. It all starts right here, right now on Guys TV. You can also catch me on KCAA Radio in Southern California and Guys Radio, my worldwide podcast. Guys TV, Guys Radio, thanks for your support. Okay, Guys Radio, it's a special guest time on the show, and I've got a very fascinating individual today. His name is Christian Sundberg. Let me tell you a little bit about him. When he was a young child, he remembered his existence before coming to Earth, if you can imagine that. With that memory, left him completely for his early adult life, but it spontaneously returned 12 years ago as Christian took up a meditation practice and went through a personal awakening journey. He also began to have out-of-body experiences, also known as OBEs. And he now officially speaks publicly as he seeks to remind others in at least a small part of who we really are beneath the human play. Professionally, Christian has worked for 16 years as a project manager for a complex nuclear pump and valve manufacturer, and he's the author of the book we're going to talk about today. It's called A Walk in the Physical, which attempts to succinctly describe the larger spiritual context in which we exist and the importance of love in our human journey. Welcome to Guys Radio, Christian Sundberg. How are you, Christian? Welcome to the show.
I'm great, sir. Thank you very much.
Well, you can call me Robert. You don't have to call me sir. So let's start right at the beginning, because I went through your book and I saw some videos with you and interviews with you, and it's an interesting what happened to you. So let's start at the very beginning for our audience. What happened? How did you remember these pre-birth memories? And as part of that, where do you think you came from at the point where you were remembering having the pre-birth memories? In other words, you remembered having pre-birth memories, but where were you in that pre-birth state? Where had you come from to get there?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm going to try to share using language because that's what we've got, but I need to disclaim before I do that language is incredibly limiting. It just has to be said up front that words are form, symbols that are based in the context of our local world, and who we are just fully transcends this local context. So I'll do what I can to speak to it, but it's just absolutely not speakable. Okay, so that's just a quick disclaimer, and I think that is important to say because I think on Earth we often think, oh, we'll just put this story on it, put this description on it, this understanding. Now I got to figure it out. Well, the larger context that we come from is very vast and deep. So to speak to your question, so how did this return for me? So as you mentioned, I had pre-birth memory up until the age of about 5 or 6. As a very small child, I assumed everybody did, and that memory left me completely then around the age of 6 or so. And I had no memory of that at all, like everybody, until about the age of 30, which was 12 years ago. I took up a long-term meditation practice. And at first I was just meditating because I felt relief from the stress and the bombardment of thinking all the time. But after a few months of meditating, I had my first non-physical experience, a very brief but very eye-opening out-of-body experience that really compelled me to continue down this path. I mean, it was very eye-opening and shocking, and I was just like, oh my gosh, there really is something here. Not that I was even trying to find that; it was just it happened. And as I continued to meditate, then eventually these pre-birth memories just returned very naturally and unassumingly. Even it was just like someone had blown leaves off of the ground or something, and there's the ground. And it was so normal.
What was the first thing you remembered?
Well, the first thing, it's hard to say what
to get you into the state where to realize that you were having pre-birth memories, what was the first memory that triggered the fact like, oh, I'm having memories of who I was before I was born?
When the memories returned, it was just apparent, and they were kind of all at once. These things aren't like physical memories where you just have one and then the next, and then you're going to the store and then you're buying groceries. It's not like that. I remembered many aspects of the pre-birth experience all at the same time.
Okay.
And the primary element of it that has stuck with me and that I think of even every day now is what I would call the process of accepting the veil. That is the vibrational distance between our higher state, our true state, and this state as an incarnated physical being. And that distance is something I feel now. And I remember taking that step, that huge step, which is, I can describe it if you like, but it's very difficult to put words on, but it's like imagine your being connected to everything, all things, and being totally full of joy and love to a degree that cannot be articulated, and having all knowing there, and going from that place down in vibration. I like to describe it as a vibration because it's like a vibration in the being, a vibration in the field of your awareness. And I like to describe it using a metaphor. If you have like an amplifier, a sound amplifier that produces a pitch, like, and then you turn down the knob, you turn it down, and you turn it down some more, and then you turn it down some more, and then crank it down more. That's what it felt like. And having all my knowledge be removed and my connectedness disappear. And so when the memory returned, I recalled taking that step and knowing that I was at that place now, as a part of the physical experience. I'm in this state of being limited in a way that is non-native, the non-native state of separation. I don't know if that speaks to your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And today, again, we're talking about Christian Sundberg and his pre-birth memories and how that impacts his life now on the planet. So a lot of people say that they come to the earth plane with a group of like-minded, if you will, soul family, etc. Did you have any inklings of anything about that when you were kind of reviewing kind of where you were and what the next steps were in terms of entering earth as a human being?
In my case, my primary intention was and is to integrate a very specific fear, a low vibration state of being that before had bested me. And since my intention was specific, this is a long and complex process, but the guides brought to me a life, like a life package, you could say, and that life package was appropriate for the intention. So in my case, my focus was not on exploring certain relationships with others that I had known before. My personal intention for this life was more focused on being able to integrate a very, very low vibration experience, a low vibration fear, because of the incredible expansion that would be possible in meeting and integrating that experience. And when I reviewed the life before accepting it, I did review my parents, but I saw them not just as the human characters. They were, they're the souls playing those characters. The mother and father human are not really all that they are. That's just like a role they're playing. And I was aware of the true nature of my parents, and I was aware of who they are as humans, even before I was born. But in my case, that relationship wasn't the primary reason for my coming, this incarnation.
So you say, so guides. So who were the guides? Were they angels? Were they orbs of light? How many of them were they? Did they have names? How did you communicate with them? And are they with you now on your earthbound journey?
Now, let's try one at a time. It's a good list of questions. So first of all, in the human realm, so on Earth, we think that reality is made up of an external shared environment with objects in it. So, of course, the questions that we ask one another are, tell me the objects, tell me how many objects, tell me the shape of the objects, and what did they look like? That's just the way that we are accustomed to perceiving what reality is. But it is only one framework. Ours is a very specific and dense and consistent framework, the physical framework. But it is only one state of being. It is a very specialized, actually, state of being. So while there are elements to this that certainly are visual and have quantities and things like that, it's very important to disclaim that that kind of nature is very difficult to speak to that in a way that makes sense on Earth, because our higher state is not limited in the same way it is here. For instance, here we're limited to discrete location. there is no limitation to discrete location on that side. Like, it's not like you're over there and I'm over here and I see that you're standing over there and I'm only over here. No, our connectedness is known, and another being can be perceived and felt as a part of you. So I'm just saying that as an example, because it's like, how can you even speak to that then, when the limitations are so much less there? Okay, but to speak to the guides, there was one primary guide that initially came to me many times to encourage me and kind of nudge me about moving to this next step of the incarnation process. And that primary guide assisted with bringing me a life packet. But I remember there being a group of guides, and I can't say the number. It wasn't a focus on the number, but there was a group of them that helped me review this life plan, you could call it. I like to describe it like a flow chart. It wasn't really so much about, I mean, there were events in the flow chart, but it was more about what it would be like to experience being me in this context. And I reviewed that context with this group, however many there were, telepathically. This is all an exchange of information that doesn't need to be spoken in words, and it's all very thorough and full and instantaneous. Like, I reviewed this entire flowchart of millions and millions of possibilities of what this life could be like, all, within the blink of an eye. It wasn't difficult at all to do that. And so part of that review was asking questions about the life and asking questions about what I could experience or who I could be, So, and there are visual elements to this. Like, for instance, just before I accepted the life, I was in what I would call a waiting area. And I remember there being this beautiful golden light, and just being in a place that was so peaceful and enriched. And this being coming to me over what felt like my upper left shoulder now. But again, there's no orientation in that way. It's like a 360-degree awareness. This being coming to me and saying, "Go now." But again, there's no visual element to that, but it was very clearly communicated. And then just before I accepted the life itself, the last, and again, this isn't linear time. So again, I say last, but it's hard to put an order on it. But I could say the last moment before accepting the incarnation, I was in a place that looked like what you could call a shop or something, a mechanics area that had a huge pit in the middle of it. And I was kind of hovering over that pit as an awareness. And these beings that were there, I like to describe them as technicians or tinkerers. I don't know how many there were, but they were very mechanical in nature, and I could feel their nature and I could feel what they do. And they do this process where they like make the veil fit for you, because the soul has so many unique qualities, and they review your qualities and they know, like, in fullness who you are. And they also review the context of the life, including the circumstances and the body limitations and all the rest. And they do this organic process where it kind of like makes it all jive and fit. Mm-hmm. So that's, yeah. So I don't know if that speaks to your question.
Yeah, all of it does. All of it does, and more. So what was the point when you entered the body to be born? Was it 6 months before and you were inside your mother's room, or was it when you were being born, your soul entered that body and out you came? Or do you know?
For me, I perceived it as a significant duration of time before the physical birth. I don't know when in the pregnancy. I have no idea. Mm-hmm. But I remember being in the womb after accepting the incarnation. And at first, almost rejecting it once again, which I've shared in my other videos that I've participated in. But I was overcome by fear immediately upon coming, because the vibrational distance between there and here was so significant. And so that was in the womb when that happened. And after that, I was in the womb for a duration, and I don't know how long that duration was, but it felt like a long time.
Okay, let me circle back to something I asked you earlier, and forgive me, I've asked you a lot of questions in a row. But soul groups, sometimes we've talked about and we've heard about groups of people who come to the planet to kind of together, and they're in and out of each other's lives. You may not know it while we're here, but when we go home, if you will, then people say, "Oh, hey, you played that role, you stinker, you," or whatever. But you did a great job. And it might be something that was even unpleasant because we were learning a lesson through that individual. What is your sense of that? And did you have that occurrence for yourself?
So yeah, I am aware that happens, that we do make plans to come and play roles for one another. in my own case, the only thing that I'm aware of now is, like I said, that review where I reviewed for this life, all that huge flow chart with the focus on being an opportunity to re-engage and process this one specific fear. So for me, the relationships and the roles were not my primary focus this time. I mean, it's possible that I have made some agreements to have some roles with some individuals. Like I have 2 children now. I don't know. Maybe the higher portion of myself has, been aware of that or made some agreement, but I'm not aware of that. What I'm aware of is in before this life, focusing on that intention of trying to actualize the experience of going very far out in one certain vibrational direction and having a chance to process that experience.
Okay.
But I'm aware that for many, that plan may certainly include certain roles or relationships.
When you mentioned that you had to deal with one of your challenges in this incarnation is focusing and overcoming kind of a low vibration that's fear-based.
Yeah.
I want to hear more about that. And was it fear of anything specific? For instance, some people, for whatever reason, and I do hypnotherapy, so I know that nobody's necessarily born with a fear of water, but maybe when you regress somebody, you find out when they were 3 years old, they were at the pool and their mother was having a martini and flirting with the lifeguard, and you fell in the water and you thought you were going to drown, and you've been afraid of the water ever since. It was something that happened here. Do
Mhm.
people, though, come into, and from your perspective, Christian, into this life, and yourself included, with fears of something specific that they need to overcome, whether it's heights or water or rattlesnakes or spiders or whatever? Or is it just for yourself, was it just fear in general as opposed to love? And that's something you needed to address. So it's kind of a two-part question. What was
Mhm.
the process for yourself? And from your perspective, do people enter into the world with predisposed fear already baked into their genetic makeup?
Okay. So first of all, fear is, when seen from that side, is not a fear of a specific object or thing or place like we experience here. Fear arises when we buy into a perception that is not in alignment with the truth of who we really are. So if we're in a state that we feel powerless, for instance, powerlessness is not in alignment with the truth of our true being. Our real being is just totally full of power and has no limitation. So, but when we are engaged in an experience where we are suddenly very limited, maybe we're stuck in a place or we're underwater or something, or we perceive that I can be harmed or I could be killed, whatever the perception is that we haven't fully integrated yet, that prompts fear. And so it is a perception, a perceptional vibration that is really the fear. Objects just trigger that. Objects are actually fundamentally neutral. It's just that we respond to objects and context. So in my case, the fear, the best way I could describe it would be the perception of being unable to escape agony, unable to escape pain, being powerless to escape pain, mixed with being too proud to suffer. Like I can't tolerate this. I can't handle this. I can't escape this. And I won't let myself feel this pain. That's the best way to describe it. And the way that actualized in this life was a traumatic medical experience at the age of 22 in China. But in a previous experience, I'm aware, I don't know the details of all of this, but I'm aware I had lived an experience where that fear had overcome me. And I had basically grown into an egoic monster. I'm sorry to say, I had harmed many others. And I was aware of that after I'd returned to the other side. So before this life, I knew that, oh my gosh, the amazing opportunity, if I could re-meet this fear and integrate it and heal it, then there would be an expansion of being into that distance. Like, think of fear as like a signpost of an opportunity for growth. We're afraid of that which we have not yet integrated. And so fear is actually kind of like a sign like, hey, there's still some part of you that is not fully integrated the depths of this experience. And and being human is one heck of an experience. It's extremely limiting, extremely dense, extremely consistent, extremely far out on the separation scale or whatever. It's very unique in that way. So it has the potential to prompt very deep fear. And that is one of actually the great opportunities of the human experience. It's not that we are shy we're actually very creatively ambitious, and we see the potential personal growth and growth of the whole that can happen if we are able to meet difficult experiences and overcome them and integrate them. We are integrators of experience. That's what we are. And as we integrate experience, what we're really doing is growing towards love. Love is the bottom line. Love is our true nature. And so as we process darkness, process fear, integrate that depth of contrast, that's like a tool that we use so as to expand the depth and richness and fullness of what we really are, which is love. Like, when you overcome fear, you're able to express love better and more in a more thorough way.
Absolutely. I want to go back to a few more specifics, if I may. And
Sure.
This is Guys Radio. My special guest, Christian Sundberg. We're talking about a lot of stuff, but one of the things is his book. It's called A Walk in the Physical, Understanding the Human Experience Within the Larger Spiritual Context. And that's exactly what we're talking about now. And there's so many questions I have. So let me see if I can get to as many as possible. And if I can't, well, I'll invite you back. We'll do part 2, because this is fascinating stuff. And I think these are things that people need to be mindful of and need to be present and need to be more aware of, because when we talk about fear, I've never seen in my tenure on this planet, in this incarnation, the fear dial turned up so high to keep people absolutely paralyzed with fear these days. And I assume it's some type of controlling tactic, but whatever it is, it's certainly prevalent. But let me just shift back for a moment and talk about guides, if it's okay, Christian. Do you now communicate with your guides when you go into meditations while you're here being Christian Sundberg?
No, I don't. I'm aware of their presence occasionally, but their nudges are quite subtle. In fact, one time I asked a gentleman that also has some non-physical exploration experience if he could check to see if I even have guides, which I know I do, but I was being a bit facetious. And he came back later and said, yes, but they say that if they interact with you directly, you're so intellectual that you will take what they have to say too seriously and rely on it too much.
Okay.
Which
now,
is probably true about my personality.
Well, let's go back then to your pre-birth. Do you recall any other incarnations, whether here on planet Earth or in other places in the universe, the solar system, other planets, you being a different type of being, who knows, a reptilian, an insectoid, a blue avian, whatever, that we read about? Do you recall any other incarnations as human, and also in other areas and other places?
I have only 3 specific memories about that, though I know that I have lived at least hundreds of times, because after meditation, one time I became aware, I saw these spheres of experience that that are me. I was this, it's the same me that feels like me to me that has done all these things, not different people. But anyway, I'm aware of one experience where I was a woman, a female human, and I had given birth. And I remember the childbirth being extremely painful, and then having this same fear that I'm dealing with in this life arise because I was pregnant a second time, and I had fear about the pain of having to go through childbirth again. And I don't remember much about that experience, but I do remember this setting being very simple, technology wise or whatever, very simple. And I also have one experience of, I know this is going to sound strange, I'm just going out on a limb here, but I remember being some kind of migrating bird. I know that sounds crazy, but I remember this extremely spiritual feeling experience, actually, of being and a very physically stressful, like physically demanding experience of flying and feeling very compelled to stay with the group, and a very different cognitive, like almost totally alien cognitive experience of that, in that experience. And I have some simple imagery associated with one non-human life, but it was some kind of intelligent civilization. I don't know what it is. I'm not going to try to label it. I'm very careful about labeling that kind of thing. I don't think it's that important to label, but I do know I've had at least one non-human experience like that. Yeah.
Okay, so if people they get this little game plan before determining when they want to come back, And then we have so many people on the planet itself, and this is a special place. It's and we'll get into that, that it's a gift. It's tough, but it's a gift also because of all we can learn. Why do not more people say, all right, I want to come back and I want to overcome this thing and get this lesson, but I want to be Mick Jagger. I want to sing in front of, thousands of people or something like that, or be a famous person or have this huge contribution instead of being, the guy who makes pizza or the Uber driver or whatever. There's nothing wrong with anybody who does anything. In fact, the real heroes of the world are the unsung, but how does somebody determine I'm going to be Derek Jeter and somebody else says I'm going to be a quadriplegic?
Right. Well, I certainly can't speak to the breadth of that process or assignment, but I'll say a couple things. First, the spirit is extremely unique. Each one of us is so unique. Like, I know we all kind of look the same. We all have a head and shoulders and eyeballs, but the who we really are as individuals are like unique galaxies or something. We're each our own universe. And so the history and qualities and intentionality and patterns of each soul are very unique. So the reason that any given person may choose and wish to have any one given experience are also very unique. So it can't be easily identified. But I will say that so first of all, I'm sure there are those that pick to have certain experiences that we might think are super wonderful. But the thing is, the earth is an extremely limiting place, and it's an extremely specific type of experience. The breadth and joy of our higher natures is beyond description. The joy is beyond description. So this is a place we come then to have a very unique and specific type of experience. And what I can say, at least, is that in my experience, the guides, I communicated that with them, and I went over with them like what would be best for me as I learned and grew. And again, this learning isn't intellectual learning. Okay, it's experiential growth, experiential learning. It's actually getting in the rubber meets the road learning and actually being something, being a person, being someone who has to actually make decisions. And so what that will mean for each person is unique. And then in my case, the guides brought me a life that was appropriate, that was a good match. I don't know how they do that, but I think metaphorically, if you want to think of it like reviewing a database or something, they go out there and they can review all the potential life slots, you could say, or avatar potentialities. I don't know. And they review the qualities of them and the full context of them. And they kind of review you and say, I think this might be a good fit. And then it's up to you to review and decide if that's something you're interested in doing or not. So I think it's probably unique for each individual, but that's at least a comment I can make about the process as I experienced it.
How about from your perspective, free will? Some people say that we have free will in the same amount that a bull tethered to a pole does. We have some, but not that much, as much as we think, but we do have some. And as part of that, going through life, are there kind of checkoff points where we may transcend, we may die, but we choose not to, or we may shift our path and get well and change our diet or this or that? And how much of that, what type of elasticity do we have with free will for all of it that we experience here on planet Earth from your perspective? And again, Christian, I'm just asking you, just in hope that you can illuminate some of this. I don't expect you to have all the answers to the secrets of the universe, but based on your experience. And thank you for understanding.
Thank you. Yeah, no, and I really enjoy so the word you used, elasticity, is a great word. So I like that word because so first of all, the thing that has the real power always is consciousness. So consciousness is like the substrate that is. And then what does consciousness do? It wields intent. And that means within a system like ours, it makes choices. The choice that we make is not necessarily, like, we might identify our choice as being for some reason, but deep down, we have a real reason for making our choice. That's what I mean by intent. That is the real movement of the soul. Okay, so yes, I feel very strongly that there is free will, but it's free will within an extremely limited context. And that's the key. Being human is off the charts in terms of limitation in comparison to our true state. And then once you're here in the limitation, you get to decide whatever you want. You can make any decision you want. It's just that there are so many limits, biological limits, societal limits, space-time limits, physics, all the things, that you really can only make so many choices. And most people only are aware of a very small subset of the larger choice set that they really do have. So out of the very small identified choices is usually what most people are choosing from. But within the decisions that are possible, you do have free will. And what I mean is within, I'll put it another way, within the limitations of the physical experience's context, you do have free will. And then beyond the physical, when the constraints are released, you still have free will. But now your limitations are much, much, much less. So now, how does that play out in the physical is when I reviewed the tree, the flow chart, there were certain avenues that were very high or very low in probability. And that just means that at the time that I reviewed it, we could say the system, like maybe use a neutral term. I like the teaching of the physicist Tom Campbell. He uses some good language for this. But the system is really good at predicting outcome. And because it knows everything, it has all the data. The whole physical universe is like a big virtual reality that is being run. And it knows the rules of it. And it also knows every single player in the game pretty darn well. But there is free will. So it doesn't have perfect predictability. It knows what's likely, especially because there are certain energetic eras that are occurring. You could call it like chapters in a play or something. That the human race at this time is going through a certain era, and that movement can be seen and is understood. And so the probability of various avenues is seen quite clearly. But what's the variable that makes it not a certain avenue? The variable is free will. The variable is that each one of us is making choices every day, and we just may make choices that bump others in ways that are unanticipated. But that is exactly what makes this physical universe so amazing, is that novelty and unexpected results can happen. Because that's something that can't happen in a higher state where all is known. Here is a place where you set very strong limitations, and then you set the players loose and they get to make choices. And now things might happen that are unique. And then you got to see what you do with that. Yeah.
Let's get into the, I need to ask this for the benefit of our audience, because it's the obvious stuff. So there's karma, and there's consequences based on actions. And people say, oh, well, if the universe is all love and God is forgiving, and what happens to, Hitler? And that's the obvious question that comes up all the time. And then for our actions themselves, why should we even pay attention to the law if it's all forgiven anyhow? So what's your response to those
there are
concepts,
two,
if you will?
Yeah, there are two things happening at the same time that sound contradictory, but are absolutely not contradictory. The first and more fundamental of the two is that we are absolutely unconditionally loved. Unconditionally loved, no conditions, no matter what. And that needs to be bold, underline, maximum font size, whatever. We are loved no matter what. Simultaneously, in the, shall we say, natural laws or divine laws that exist, we are all absolutely 100% accountable for every single action, every single thought, every single intent, everything. It all is a part of who we are, we could say. And karma is just a crude word that we use for what we could say is energetic accountability. So it just means if I have a lot of fear, and then I become an egoic person because my ego is trying really hard to help me to protect myself from fear, and I hurt others. Then when I get to the other side, I see I have that fear. That fear is a part of me, and so I'm responsible for it even now. And so then it's my choice to say, wow, it would be best if I could really heal that and integrate that and move past that. Because again, that decision making, everything that I was is a part of me. And we are all like that. We all have, we could say, energetic momentum based on the quality of our intention, based on the quality of our choice making. And it can lead to future experiences, whether in this life or in a future life. And it's not some harsh, like eye for an eye system. That's not the nature of it. It's simply that we are 100% accountable, because that is the words are hard here. I'm always going to say best way, but I certainly won't speak to the way spirit operates. But I'll just say that is a way that leads us ever towards growth of love, towards love, and past fear and ego.
What is God from your perspective and from your experiences?
Yeah, so that's another example of a question where we like to think we know things are real, like energy and objects and people. So is God like a man? Is he like energy? Is he like what's objects have existence because of that which gives rise to them. And I know that sounds cryptic, but it's important to recognize the fundamentalness of God, of source. So metaphorically is the best I can do.
Okay.
The metaphor would be that every soul is like a drop in the ocean, and God, source, that's probably maybe a better word, is the entire ocean, the all that is. But it's not just an impersonal thing. It's also the full sentient, loving, beyond language, most personal source of all of us that is in all things. So we could say we could say he or she, it is a substrate, but it's also sentient and fully unconditionally loving beyond any comprehension, like very, very aware, and real, more real than anything in this world, actually.
So people talk about, manifestation as and the law of attraction and all that stuff. How can people, if tap into their godliness, go inside, and also from the sentientness of everything, to tap into God, to heal themselves, to manifest things, to solve their, day-to-day 3D type problems? How can people work with guides, work with the other side, be in contact with those who have crossed over, etc., live more of a metaphysical existence instead of our reactive existence, and become more responsive?
Yes, more responsive to that deeper nature. Yeah. So that is a very personal question for each individual, because each person's walk with the divine will be unique. And that, I think that's really important to lift up, because each person's process and the way they experience reality, in fact, is incredibly unique. But I'll at least make one tangible comment, because we need tangible things while we're human. We need something specific. In my case, meditation was a world changer. It was so important. And it was, it starts as an activity. It sounds like a physical activity. Well, it can start as an activity, but it is very important to take that time to focus our awareness towards awareness itself, not towards the many objects in the mind that seem so real, all the thinking, all the stories. And the reason I say that in the context of your question is, the deeper we are associated with the thoughts and with the labels and with the story, the deeper our experience here of separation is. In fact, it's very painful to think all day long. It's just very painful to only think you are this small story with these problems and these limitations. And I got to get this next thing. And oh my gosh. And, and the ego's driving the bus all day. And next thing. That it's just it's very painful, because our true nature is not so beholden to form as we have. Like we've come so deep into this experience of separation that it hurts at times. So meditation is very helpful, because as we redirect our attention away from these super important thoughts towards that awareness that is always present, that field of aliveness, the aliveness of your body and of your mind itself, with no need, just for a few minutes, just for 20 minutes or 40 minutes, you give yourself permission. Just for these 40 minutes, I'm not going to worry about all these very important thoughts, because your thoughts are coming in, they're arriving because you think they're important. So they're important. They're going to keep coming because you decided they're important. So they're going to keep arriving. Well, just for this time period, you just totally give yourself permission. These thoughts are not important for these 40 minutes. I'm just going to focus on, well, at first you pick a neutral object, and I speak to this in my book somewhat. because I think it's important to have something specific to do when you start. But you start focusing on a neutral object just so you can regain your focus, because at the beginning, you're lost in thought. You don't have you're lost in the river. The river is pulling you along. But over time, as you regain the ability to focus, you can actually let go of even the object of focus in your mind and simply be aware of the present moment itself for all that it is. Be aware of the aliveness of who you are, the aliveness of this present moment. And you're not trying to accomplish anything when you do this. But what may happen is the deeper parts of yourself may rise up all on their own. I mean, that's how I experienced it, is that by going down this path, it wasn't like I was trying to do something. It's just that as the stories were let go, everything else rose up. And that may include fear, by the way. I don't want to go down too big of a tangent, but if you let go of your ego stories, it means the stories that are protecting you, you're letting go of too. So if you have real feelings locked down in there, they may rise up to be felt. And that's okay. That's good, actually. Feeling and allowing all that is a powerful path towards what you asked about.
Okay, Christian Sundberg, my very special guest. We're talking about a walk in the physical and understanding the human experience within the larger spiritual context and his pre-birth kind of knowing. Have you ever, two questions here, and we're getting close to the end, but I want to get these in. One is, have you ever thought that or doubted your experience and said, maybe I just meditated this and I'm just doing what I'm doing? That's number one.
No, not since because the level at which this occurs is more real than anything local and beyond a place where human, how do I put this? Here on Earth, we have to use thinking discernment using our thinking objects. That's how we decide things on Earth. So if we're in that mode, of course, we will have thinking doubts. But the layer of being at which these things happen is transcendent. I guess that's the only way I can put it. So for me, I have no doubt. Now, there are moments when I may doubt, certain thoughts I've had about it as a result. But the experience itself is not like that. Our true being is so real that when you get in touch with it, it's not up for debate. It's not. Its realness is self-evident, you could say, totally self-evident in a way that is quite immune to, the ponderances of the thinking mind.
Okay. Now you come here and part of your challenge was to assuage some low-level fears that you had, low vibrational fears. How are you doing?
Yeah, I wouldn't say assuage. I would say that I'm actually here to fully feel and get into the deepest nitty-gritty darkness possible.
Okay. Okay.
And I have been doing that. I mean, I had post-traumatic stress in my 20s after this main event because I had not integrated it. But through about 6 years of counseling, I healed layer after layer after layer, and I felt layer after layer. And I still sometimes have experiences where this rises up, and that's okay. But the path then is one of feeling. It's one of allowing, not one of trying to make better and go away. It's one of actually, no, like I have felt this way, and I will allow myself to feel it and know it. And basically to know everything about my experience, to let myself feel all of what this experience is without locking pieces away, without judging, without putting new labels on it, just fully experiencing everything, even going to the bathroom, fully experiencing that. That's what this is about, is a full aware, alert knowing.
Now, a lot of folks, and last question here, a lot of folks say that, and I've had a lot of guests on the show talking about we're in a kind of an ascension time, and of course, linear time can be tricky because everything technically is happening at the same time, and we just see things linearly in 3D. But some people say that there's a split coming where some people are going to ascend to like fifth dimension, and other folks are saying that's not for me, and they're not going to, and they're not going to recognize maybe ETs and things like that. And there's a bifurcation happening with the planet. What's your take on all of that?
Yeah. Well, I don't know anything about a bifurcation. I know I've read about a bifurcation in Dolores Cannon's books. My wife and I are reading them right now. I don't have any personal knowledge of a bifurcation, but I do remember in my pre-birth experience knowing very plainly that the human race is now at this point in time, was going to and is now going through an awakening process. And that awakening was just like, it's just known. It's just seen, yes, this is what the human race is doing now. We're waking up and we're doing it rather quickly. And there's going to be some friction because there's a lot of old fear that is coming up to be processed. And, you made a comment earlier about all the fear out there in the world. I'm not making light of it, but actually it's the fear in us. And that is old fear that is coming up to a large part, coming up to be faced and processed and healed precisely because we are awakening. We're beginning to question a lot of these old patterns and actually gain in awareness. And these kind of discussions, I think, are going to be more common, because humans are waking up. And as that vibration increases, the number of people that are aware and the depth that we're each aware is going to increase, because that vibrational distance is very slowly decreasing.
Mm-hmm. Are you optimistic about the future for humanity?
Absolutely optimistic. Optimism is life can't fail. I'll put it that way. Life can't fail. Love can't fail. Yeah, things can crash and die and break, but yeah, I'm very optimistic.
Fantastic. Okay, Christian Sundberg, my special guest. The book is A Walk in the Physical, Understanding the Human Experience Within the Larger Spiritual Context. Great job. Really fascinating stuff. I hope we can do it again. And thank you so much for being on Guys Radio. Terrific.
Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you.
If you're enjoying the content and the guests I bring you each and every week to Guys Radio and TV, please subscribe to our channels. Thanks for your support.